When my daughter needed urgent surgery, I asked for help. My mother said, "We can't just give money to everyone." 2 days later, my sister shared a story. My parents gave her a trip to a spa and new furniture. I didn't stay silent. I took action. My parents were shocked because when your child needs life-saving surgery and you don't have the money, something inside you breaks. I found that out on a Tuesday morning in October. One second I was packing Ellie's lunch and the next my phone was ringing from an unknown number. It was the school nurse. My 7-year-old had fainted during recess. I got there fast, but by the time I arrived, the paramedics were already loading her into the ambulance. I kept asking what was wrong, but no one had answers. Just clipped phrases. Low blood pressure. Abdominal pain. Unresponsive. The hospital gave me the full picture. Ellie had a severe intestinal obstruction. Congenital apparently. Silent until now. It was serious. The doctor explained the complications. Words like necrosis, infection, rupture. Surgery had to happen within the week. The sooner the better. Recovery would be long. Expensive. But if we waited, she might not recover at all. The estimate they handed me looked like a ransom note. Just under $40,000 up front. The insurance would reimburse some of it, eventually. But we didn't have time. I didn't have the money. I didn't even have half. I sat alone in the waiting room with that paper in my hand, staring at it until the ink blurred. I felt cold. Not because of the AC, but because I knew what I had to do next, and I already hated it. I had to ask my parents for help. They were wealthy. Very. Their logistics company had taken off about 5 years ago after Alex, my husband, came on board and restructured the whole thing. They'd been barely breaking even before that. Alex brought in real contracts, real money, and actual investors. He built them a system, hired the right team, even gave them cash when the banks wouldn't. He never once asked for a favor back. Then he died. It was sudden. Car accident. He was on his way to pick up flowers for our anniversary. After he died, my parents took over the company. I didn't have the energy to fight. I let them. I had a toddler and a mortgage and grief like a weight strapped to my chest. And I truly believed they'd do the right thing. They promised to manage it for now. Just until I got back on my feet. That was 5 years ago. So I drove to their house. The same one Alex helped pay off. I told them everything. Sat at their kitchen island holding back tears. Told them how much it would cost. How urgent it was. How I would repay every penny. I wasn't looking for a handout. I was begging for time. My mother tapped her fingers on her mug and said she was sorry, but they couldn't just give money to everyone. My father nodded slowly like it hurt him to agree. Said they were trying to be careful with their finances. Suggested I sell my car. Maybe downsize. I left. No screaming. No slamming doors. Just silence. I drove to my grandmother's place without even thinking. I hadn't called her, but somehow she knew something was wrong the second she opened the door. I told her. She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her savings. Literally, cash from under the floorboard of her closet. She said she'd pawn her jewelry for the rest. She saved Ellie's life. And 2 days later I saw Brielle's post. My younger sister. She was on a spa retreat in Arizona. I recognized the name of the place. $700 a night at least. New furniture in her room, all white marble and velvet. A caption full of emojis and sparkle filters. Surprise gifts from mom, 2 hearts just because, bathtub sparkles. Just because. That's when everything in me went still. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. Because I realized the truth. They didn't help me because they chose not to. And that's when I remembered something buried deep in the back of a drawer. A file Alex made me sign years ago. He told me, "If anything ever happens to me, this will protect you." I never looked at it again. Until that night. It wasn't a will. It wasn't a trust. It was a controlling ownership agreement. In the company. And it had my name on it. They thought they owned everything. They had no idea they worked for me. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I sat at the dining table surrounded by old files, stacks of paperwork I hadn't touched since Alex died. Most of it was clutter. But I found what I was looking for. A signed and notarized shareholder agreement. Dated 2 months before the accident. It was boring legal language until one paragraph in particular nearly stopped my heart. In the event of Alex's death, his full ownership stake in the company would transfer to his spouse. Me. with a controlling interest of 52%. I read it 3 times before I even reacted. The document had my signature. I remembered that day vaguely now. Alex saying he wanted to make things secure in case of the unexpected. I was half listening, wrangling Ellie, who was 2 at the time, and sticking forks into electrical sockets. I had no idea what I was signing. They didn't either. My parents had no clue. That explained a lot, actually. After Alex died, they moved fast. Changed the office locks. Froze me out of meetings. Hired new accountants. I assumed they were just trying to keep the company afloat. I didn't ask questions. I was too broken to care. But now they were living in a mansion bought with money Alex brought in, while the same daughter he loved was almost denied surgery. I couldn't let that go. So I made one phone call. Just one. Jackson and Reeve were 2 of Alex's oldest friends. Corporate attorneys. They helped him set up the company structure and had stayed close even after we lost him. They remembered the agreement. They even had copies. I emailed them everything I had, and within 24 hours they got back to me with 2 words. You're in. I didn't go to my parents' house. I didn't tell them what I found. I let the lawyers handle it. Quietly. Surgically. They served the papers on a Wednesday afternoon while my father was in a client meeting. I wasn't there, but I heard from someone at the office that he turned pale and left mid-sentence. By Friday I was sitting at the head of a long glass conference table, across from the 2 people who gave me life, and tried to forget I existed. My mother looked like she wanted to scream. My father barely looked at me. I said nothing for a full minute. I let them sit in it. Then I handed them a printed copy of the shareholder agreement. I told them I'd reviewed the finances, the reports, the bank statements, and I told them what I found. Let's just say it wasn't pretty. There were payments disguised as consulting fees, half of which went straight into my sister's personal account. Company cars for people who didn't exist. Fake vendor contracts. Trips billed as logistics conferences that turned out to be golf weekends in the Caymans. And here's the thing. They used my money to do it. I didn't threaten them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I gave them 2 options. Sell me their shares voluntarily, or wait until the fraud investigation became public. Jackson and Reeve had everything documented. Every wire transfer. Every fake receipt. My father asked if we could talk, just the 3 of us. I said no. They walked out of that building looking like strangers. I didn't even watch them leave. I was too focused on Ellie's picture sitting on my new desk. She smiled at me from a pink frame missing a front tooth, with no idea how close she came to losing everything. And then I got a text from my grandmother. All it said was, "He'd be proud of you." He meant Alex. And I believed her. I thought reclaiming control would bring peace. It didn't. The moment I became majority owner, the company started to bleed. Not because of me, because of the mess they left behind. My parents weren't just careless. They were calculated. They used the company like an ATM for years, and now that the machine wasn't spitting out cash for them, they were angry. They didn't go quietly. My father tried to play the victim. Started telling the staff I was unstable, that grief had made me vindictive. My mother called every supplier she could and told them I was planning to shut down operations. There were whispers. Tension. I walked into the building every morning feeling like I'd stepped onto a chessboard where every piece wanted me gone. But I wasn't backing down. I started cleaning house. Quietly. The fake vendors? Gone. The bloated contracts? Terminated. I brought in new leadership, people who'd worked under Alex and knew how the company used to run. I called in every favor Jackson and Reeve had, and I used their legal team like a scalpel. Then 3 weeks in, it escalated. I arrived at the office and my keycard didn't work. At first I thought it was a glitch. But then I saw the new security guy, hired by my father before he was pushed out, standing at the door looking nervous. He said my parents had come in the night before. That they claimed there'd been a leadership mistake. That they were taking back what was theirs. They didn't think I'd show up that early. They didn't expect I'd already frozen the company accounts. Or that I'd filed for an emergency injunction the day before, based on new evidence I found. Falsified tax records going back 4 years. The kind the IRS doesn't overlook. I called the police. Had them escorted off the property. By noon I sent a company-wide email. I attached every document, proof of fraud, proof of mismanagement, proof of what they tried to do to their own daughter. I didn't write it emotionally. I didn't ask for pity. I just laid out the facts. Numbers. Dates. Signatures. Names. Then I did something unexpected. I gave the employees a choice. Stay and rebuild with me. Or leave and I'd help them find work elsewhere. No hard feelings. 80% stayed. The 20% who left. Most were loyal to my parents. Or to the perks they'd gotten through back channels. I didn't care. Because that night I went home and Ellie was waiting for me with a drawing. It was me, her and Grandma, holding hands under a sun with a smiling face. She'd written "Thank you, Mommy" at the top in crooked little letters. I put it on my fridge. Right next to the eviction notice I was preparing. Because my parents hadn't paid the property taxes on their house in over 2 years. The deed? Also in my name. They thought I wouldn't look that far. They were wrong. I parked across the street and just sat there for a few minutes, engine off, watching the lights in the windows. Their house looked the same. Grand, spotless, fake. Like the pages of a luxury home catalog. All high ceilings and matching furniture no one ever sat on. A white Range Rover gleamed in the driveway. My mother's car. A gift from Alex 6 months before he died. I wasn't here to reminisce. I had papers in my bag stamped and signed. I'd waited weeks, moved carefully, quietly. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. My parents thought they were untouchable. That no matter what they did I'd never push too hard. That I didn't have it in me. So I got out, crossed the street and knocked. My father opened the door. He didn't look surprised. Just tired. Like he already knew why I was there. He called for my mother. She came down slowly in the same silk robe she'd been wearing the day she told me to sell my car for Ellie's surgery. I handed them the envelope without a word. She opened it, skimmed the top page and froze. The notice was clear. They had 30 days to vacate the property. The back taxes hadn't been paid in over 2 years. The mortgage had been refinanced illegally under the company's name. That was enough to seize the home. And since the title had never been updated after Alex died, it passed to me along with everything else. My father tried to speak but I cut him off. I didn't yell. I didn't insult them. I just told them what they already knew but never accepted. This wasn't their house. It never had been. It was a gift. From a man they used. And now it was gone. I turned around and walked away before they could say another word. I didn't need to hear excuses. I'd heard enough. 2 weeks later I hired a team to inventory the house. They were professionals, respectful. I told them to pack up anything my parents could prove they'd purchased themselves. Everything else. Furniture, artwork, decor stayed with the property. Most of it had been written off as company expenses anyway. Brielle showed up that day. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as a mover wrapped a chandelier in thick plastic. She didn't say hello. She asked if I was proud of myself. I told her I was proud my daughter was alive. She muttered something about how none of this would have happened if Alex hadn't left everything to me. That's when I realized she actually believed she deserved it. That they deserved it. Like it was their birthright. But Alex didn't leave me the company out of sentiment. He did it because he knew what they were. He saw it before I did. He protected me because he didn't trust them to do the right thing. And they proved him right. The house sold within the month. The proceeds went toward paying off the back taxes, settling some final legal fees, and making a sizable donation to the pediatric unit at the hospital that saved Ellie's life. I didn't keep the house. I didn't want it. I just made sure they couldn't use it again. I thought it was over after the house sold. Thought I'd finally closed the last door on everything my parents had broken. But I was wrong, there was one more thing. Something even I hadn't seen coming. It started with a phone call from one of the auditors we'd hired to clean up the company's finances. He asked if I had a few minutes to go over a strange batch of transfers, dating back 5 years. I told him to send them over. When I opened the files I felt my stomach twist. The transfers weren't from the company account. They were from Alex's personal one. Quiet monthly payments. Small enough not to raise alarms, regular enough to be deliberate. All sent to one account I didn't recognize. And they hadn't stopped after his death. They'd stopped 3 months later. I asked Jackson to help me dig into it. It took 2 days to trace the account to a private mailbox in upstate New York. The name attached to it wasn't anyone I knew. But the social security number matched someone who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. My father's first business partner. A man named Joel DeWitt. He'd disappeared after a company scandal years ago. According to my parents, he'd taken off and cut all ties. They blamed him for everything that went wrong before Alex stepped in. But here he was. Still alive. Still getting payments. From Alex. Jackson pulled old emails. Found fragments. Conversations between Alex and Joel. Bank statements. Drafted contracts. And then we found it. A joint project proposal. A side venture Alex had tried to launch with Joel before the main company took off. Logistics and data tech. Something way ahead of its time. Alex had offered my father a stake. My father declined. Joel didn't. But something happened. Something ugly. Based on the emails we could piece together, my father forced Joel out. Quietly, legally, and with a payoff to keep it buried. Alex disagreed. But rather than fight, he set up a monthly compensation agreement and promised Joel a silent share of future profits. From his own earnings. That's where the payments came from. And when Alex died, those payments stopped. Because my parents made sure they did. Joel never asked again. So I did something I'm sure they never expected. I tracked him down. He lived in a modest apartment outside Albany. Worn down building. No name on the buzzer. I knocked, unsure what I'd even say. He opened the door, thin and older than the last photo I'd seen in the files. But he knew who I was instantly. He didn't invite me in. He just asked, "You found the transfers?" I nodded. He said he figured I would eventually. I asked why he never came forward. Why he let them erase him. He said Alex was the only decent one, and after he was gone, there was no one left to trust. I stood there for a long time before I finally asked him the question that had been burning in my head since I read those emails. Did he have any of the original tech? He smiled barely. Then he reached into a file cabinet and pulled out a dusty binder, labeled with my husband's handwriting. They didn't just destroy people. They buried potential. They tried to erase the one thing Alex built outside of them. And now I had it. The binder changed everything. Inside were Alex's original plans for a company he never got to build. A logistics system way ahead of its time. He called it Threadline. It had nothing to do with my parents. It was all him. And Joel. Joel had been quietly paid by Alex until the payments stopped after his death. My parents cut him out and buried the idea. But Joel kept every draft, every sketch. I decided to finish what Alex started. I opened a new company, Threadline Systems. Clean. Independent. I used money I recovered from my parents. Money that should have never been theirs. I gave Joel his share. I brought back people my parents discarded. We didn't make noise, we just worked. And it took off. My parents found out through the press release. My mother messaged. My father called. I ignored both. Now Ellie is healthy. Happy. My grandmother visits every week. And in my new office I have 2 photos on the wall. Alex. And Ellie. That's the legacy I kept.